the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
It's such a tough tightrope to kind of walk onto, where you're physical, you're playing defense at the level Rick Barnes wants you to, but you're not getting foul calls. And some of that just depends on the officiating crew on some nights. Like some nights the whistle's just a little bit more frequent, and that can kind of kill your game plan. So it's going to be case by case, like you said, just with the matchups and who he goes up against. But this is definitely a game that he could kind of build a lot of momentum with, even if it's not like a big scoring night or something, and maybe one that if you check the box score, it doesn't jump out. It could still be like a really positive game for him.
Is there anything? I mean, we're just kind of taking Zakai for granted. I mean, when you're looking at his shots and they aren't falling, like, what do you think of his shot selection thus far?
It's tough because, like, you want to just be like, hey, you're shooting a lot of threes, and he's hitting them at a reasonable stroke, but it's not at an elite level. So it's like, all right, we'll get to the rim more, and then you remember that he's listed at 5'9", and I'm not even sure if he is 5'9", like if we're being realistic. So
yeah.
It's a lot easier said than done to just be like, hey, stop settling for threes when that's probably the best look he's going to get a lot of the time. He is a really good finisher at the rim when he's able to create that space. It's just so tough against.
He had a really good play against Miami where he used his body, and the body kind of floated in, and just he was able to kind of just position himself where the guy couldn't, the Miami big just couldn't get it. And it was that drive. He was on the baseline, and he drove from 3-point line and just went inside. It was probably his best shot of the game.
And he's really good in those spots. I feel like his wingspan obviously isn't like 7 feet long, but it's positive, and it's enough that if he kind of gets his body into a big, he can flip it over with just kind of that full extension arm almost. So it's in his bag, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely a lot easier for him to get off threes than to go in amongst the trees down there. So I'm not like overly concerned about the shot selection, I guess. It's one of those things that almost feels worse watching the games than when you actually pull up the stat sheet. Like he's shooting 42.9% from the field, which is his best of his career. And we're only through 9 games, but like he's never shot above 40% from the field in his career. He's 32.7% from the field, which is his third best in his 4-year career. The only worst season was that sophomore season, but it's not far behind his other mark, 35.2% as a freshman and 34.4% last year. And then with that added boost of going from 6.1 assists, which is really good, to 8 assists a game, I mean, he's playing really good basketball. And it does feel almost like fans, media, just everyone kind of watching takes it for granted a little bit at this point, because he's been there for what feels like 8 years now, just because he was such a big part of the team as a first-year player. But man, I mean, if you listen to what Rick Barnes said about him after the game, and just all the things that like Rick said, I wouldn't trade him for anyone. We're so happy he's here and things like that. It speaks volumes about him. You can tell that Zakai is one of the favorite players Rick Barnes has ever coached, if not his favorite players ever coached, just because he does everything exactly like Rick Barnes wants it. Starts in the defensive end and is really smart on the offensive end. But talking to Larinaga, the Miami coach, after the game too, asked him about Chaz Lanier. I thought his kind of answer on that, but bringing in Zakai Zeigler, was really interesting and insightful, where he talked about how Lanier is great. He was great last year. He's great this year. But what's letting him take the next step is his teammates around him are also elite. And the one that he name dropped was Zakai Zeigler, because if Chaz Lanier has his opening, if he's off ball and he gets to a spot, Zakai's got the court vision to get to him every single time in exactly the right spot. So it's been one of those things that he really has made his teammates a lot better, and we've seen that with Chaz Lanier already.
Absolutely. Switching gears here, Lady Vols late on Saturday. They beat Iowa in a game where my wife and I were sitting there watching it, and I was like, I don't know. I like they're fighting, but I just don't know if they're gonna have the juice to pull this out at the end. And I don't think they compared Olsen to Caitlin Clark enough on the broadcast.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.